So I had the opportunity when COVID came along, and I had a little free time, right? We all did. We weren't on planes anymore, a lot of Zoom calls, but I started taking some nutrition classes and I loved it. And I just kept taking them, and eventually I was done, and I was a certified holistic nutritionist and also a certified health and wellness coach. So I opened my own practice, and while I was doing that, I thought, I got this far, I might as well go get board certified. So I went and did that for both, and that took me about a year. And then most recently, I've actually gone back to get my master's in science because I am sort of a geek about research and science, but I just find it super interesting and I'm very passionate about it. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Hashimoto's, but it's where your body attacks your thyroid and tries to damage and kill it. And so I went to the doctor with a pain in my side, so I don't even know how that was even connected, but it was enough for me to go to the doctor. And I really am thankful that I found this doctor because she said, well, we're not going to just give you medicine. We're just not going to treat the symptom. We're going to try to heal you through nutrition and supplements. So I left the doctor that day, really still not knowing much about what Hashimoto's was. I had a very bad photocopy of what I was supposed to eat and what I wasn't supposed to eat, along with a really long list of supplements. And as time went on, I could see my antibodies, which were the ones that signal that there's a problem going on, reduce down, and these many years later, I have very few antibodies left. So I've really gotten the Hashimoto's under control. But that was sort of an aha moment, like, hey, I could see this happening on me. I wasn't just reading about people having good nutrition and getting healthier. So I get asked a lot, what is holistic nutrition? And it's really about the whole person. It's just not about what you eat, right? It's about how much you move and how active you are. It's about stress and mental health and how well those are being managed. It's about connection and how connected you are to your environment, to your family, to your friends. It's about sleep, which is very underrated. You all should be getting 7 to 9 hours every night. And then, of course, the environment, what's out there that shouldn't be in our bodies but is getting into our bodies. And so I wanted to focus on that today because I think we don't talk about it nearly as much as we should. So we're going to talk about toxins. I'm going to introduce that. And then we're going to dive into some topics around food and the toxins that we're putting into our bodies every day by what we eat. And then I'm going to just touch on testing at the end. Oh, and before I go further, a lot of this information I put up on my website, and I'll give you a QR code at the end. You don't have to sign up for anything. Just go to resources, environmental toxins, and I've got a lot of this and much, much more listed for you all to look at if you so desire. So what is the why? And I think that's always very important for us to think about when we're eating food and what's going into our body. Because we all want to be healthy, right? We all want to be able to go and work hard and then come home and play hard with our family. We want to be able to chase our kids or our grandkids, or over the last couple days, chase after Jackie. We need that energy, right? And so, but we're a pretty sick nation, and these stats are US. I know there's some people here from Europe, but these are focused on US. So 60% of the US has one chronic condition, and the CDC defines a chronic condition as one that lasts more than a year or more, one that limits your activities, and that you need ongoing medical attention. So that's That's heart disease, kidney disease, liver disease, autoimmune conditions, obesity, so on and so forth. So if we have 150 people here, 90 of us have a chronic disease. Almost 12% of the US population has diabetes, with 38% of us having prediabetes. If you're not checking your fasting glucose or your A1C or whichever measure you want to use to see how you're processing sugar in your glucose, you really need to do that every year. 93% of the US population is metabolically dysfunctional, and metabolic syndrome means 3 or more of the following, which is high blood pressure, high triglycerides, low HDL, a waist size of 35 inches or more for women, 40 inches or more for a man, and I'm missing one, high triglycerides, I think I didn't say. Oh, and low HDL is the one I missed, so that's good cholesterol. And then 42% of the US population in adults are obese, and that's up from 2000, quite a bit. So what about chemicals? There's a lot of them. In the past 6 years, there's been 140,000. I've actually seen some studies that have said 350,000, but we'll go conservative, 140,000. And we put out commercially 1,000 to 2,000 every year. CDC says in our bodies, we have 116 chemicals. They shouldn't be there, but they're there on average. And this next stat is very concerning. In the blood cord of American infants, 358 chemicals have been detected. So not only are we taking in toxins, we're actually passing them down to our children, and in some cases, we're passing them down to our grandchildren. And right now, there's almost 42,000 chemicals that are actively being used commercially in the US. So what is an environmental toxin? It's really just a substance that's harmful to humans and our environment. It's kind of simple, right? And it can be naturally occurring or man-made. Example, arsenic. It's naturally occurring and also can be man-made. It includes chemicals, pollutants, biological agents, lots of different things. And it can enter your body through the air, through the water that you drink, the food that you eat, right? Or the product that we put on our skin. And it's related, how toxic something is based on the chemical, of course, but how long are you exposed to it? How frequently are you exposed to it? What is the route of exposure? Are you eating it, drinking it, rolling around in the dirt in it? Lots of different ways it can get into you. Are you combining chemicals? So for example, acetylphenamine, which you find in Tylenol, mixed with alcohol becomes a much more toxic toxin. And then a person's stage of life. In the womb, an infant or puberty, like stages of development, at those times you have a greater risk of having those toxins be harmful to you. So there's lots of different sources of toxins. I won't go through all of them, but we will talk about food additives, but cleaning products, personal care products, your prescription medication, right? Air pollution. Do you know the EPA says that the air inside of our homes is 3 times more toxic than the air outside of our homes? And that's the World Health Organization says that 7 million people a year die prematurely because of air pollution. So a lot of people dying due to toxins. And what's the impact on our health? This is just a short list, but hormonal imbalance, neurological issues, right? You can get cancer, chronic diseases, inflammation. I mean, the list goes on. Death, right? There's a lot that can happen when we have a large toxic burden. And so here are some symptoms of toxic burdens: headache, fatigue, skin issues. The problem with this list, which is just a short list, is that these symptoms look like a lot of other symptoms of other diseases. So sometimes it's really hard to figure out, do I have Hashimoto's, or do I just have too many toxins in my body? Because some of those symptoms can be very similar. So you're detoxing all the time. Your body is working hard to get rid of those things that shouldn't be in your body. I'm often, when I'm talking with clients, it always seems to come up, should I detox? Should I detox? Maybe you shouldn't. But your pathways have to be working properly, because if you're going to do some kind of a detox, all you're doing is making matters worse if you can't detox properly. So pathways would be your skin. Your skin's good at keeping your insides in and keeping a lot of the outside out. And you sweat. When you sweat, toxins are coming out. So it's good to sweat. Cardiovascular system, your blood is transporting toxins to your lungs to breathe back out. Liver, we're going to talk about the liver in a little bit of detail. It's really your master detox organ, and it's filtering your blood, and it's trying to crush all those toxins, and then you expel them through your kidneys or through the digestive system, feces. Respiratory system, your lungs are expelling like CO2, so gas, waste gas, and also if you get stuff in your lungs can create mucus, and you can cough it out, which is great. Kidneys are filtering toxins, and they come out as urine, of course. I'm giving a special shout out to the spleen. It's producing white blood cells that are trying to crush pathogens and viruses and things of that nature. And then last of all, the colon, right? Whatever the digestive system doesn't reabsorb, it comes out through your colon and feces. So before we touch on the liver in a little more detail, it's really important to know that you need to have antioxidants for your liver to pull from. And glutathione, I don't know if you guys have heard of glutathione, but it's really your master antioxidant that is going to help reduce free radicals, and I'll talk about free radicals in the next slide. But it really supports the detox pathways. So where do you find antioxidants? Fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, whole foods is where you find antioxidants. So your liver works in an amazing way. Your body is just absolutely incredible when it comes to trying to always stay in balance. And there's something called oxidation, and maybe you've heard about it, but it's really a normal process of your body. It's a reaction from different metabolic processes, right? And it is where, as an example, iron, if it oxidizes, it turns into rust. If you have patio furniture out in the sunshine all summer and it's getting dry and cracking, that's oxidized carbon molecules. Same thing happens in your body. Oxidation causes free radicals. Now, free radicals are part of the process of detoxification in your liver. Again, very normal. You just can't get out of hand with free radicals. There's always a balance. And so what a free radical is it's a molecule that is unstable. And it's unstable because it's supposed to have 2 electrons, but it only has 1. I know we're getting a little sciencey, but stick with me here. And so when it only has 1 electron, it's going all rogue, right? It's causing damage, and it's trying to go around and find other cells that it can steal their electrons. And if it steals their electrons, free radicals become stable. But the other cell can either become a free radical itself, or it can just be damaged and cause illness within your body. And free radicals don't help with aging either, right? They're one of the causes of aging. So we have antioxidants to come to the rescue. And antioxidants come along and say, hey, free radical, I know you're going rogue all over the place and you need another electron. Here, have an electron. Free radical becomes stable and all is right with the world. And why do I tell you this? Because those reactions, and I'll give you a specific example, are very important in the detoxification and getting rid of toxins in your body. So the liver, when it's working correctly, it's going to get rid of like 99.9% of everything that flows, all the toxins that flow through your body, if it's working right. 2 phases. Phase 1, and it has certain nutrients. You can see there the B vitamins, and I've listed off to the side, some examples of the food where you can get those vitamins. There's 3 things that can happen in phase 1. Phase 1 can either neutralize the toxin, that's awesome, and it just gets flushed out of the body. 2, it can make whatever that toxin in is go from fat soluble to water soluble, so it can again be flushed out of the body. Or number 3, it can't really do anything with it. It needs to pass it off to phase 2. And at that point, phase 1 does change the structure of the toxin, and sometimes it can even make the toxin more toxic. So then it's really important that phase 2 comes to the rescue and gets rid of that particular toxin. You can see there's more nutrients needed, and I've also listed, this is on my website too under resources, so it's there for you to take. And phase 2 has some pathways, conjugation, and we're not going to go through those, but those pathways target certain toxins and they need certain nutrients to do their job. So if you're lacking any of these nutrients and you have a toxin that comes in that one of these pathways is supposed to get rid of, it's going to have a really hard time getting rid of it. So let me give you an example of what can happen with the free radicals on phase 1 and phase 2. So say someone eats a poison mushroom, the poison then goes into the liver. The liver's like, wow, that's a lot of poison, right? It's trying to now neutralize it. Every time a toxin is being neutralized, free radicals are formed. That's just how it is. If you have so many toxins like a poison mushroom, right, there's going to be this cascade of free radicals now. Now they're just pouring out. And the liver is going to go to its reserve of antioxidants and try to squash them down. But at some point, that reserve is going to be empty, right? Because this is a highly toxic form of poison, mushrooms. And so at some point, it just causes liver damage. And then it'll cause liver failure. And then it could cause death. So very important. I know that's kind of a radical way to put it all together, but you got to make sure you have enough antioxidants. So because I like pictures, I put it in a format of a picture. So we have toxins entering the body, go to the liver, and ideally we're sweating it out, the toxins that have been neutralized or whatever's been processed, we're exhaling them. They're going out in our urine or our feces. But what happens if this doesn't happen? Then where do they go? We recycle them back into our body. We reabsorb them. You might think that's a bad thing, and it is. It's a very bad thing. Because now your body has to either try to go through trying to get rid of them again, or a lot of chemicals, they like to take up home within our body. Some of them, like our fat cells or our muscles. Lead, for example, loves to sit in our muscle tissue, in our bones. likes to sit in the place of calcium, which then can cause brittle bones. So we don't want to be recycling and reabsorbing all of our toxins. Do you see that? I did that. So boom, bioaccumulation. What happens is you're taking in more toxins or it's recycling more toxins than you can get rid of. What does that cause? Illness and disease. So how long do chemicals, toxins stick around? Well, some of them a really long time in our environment and in our bodies. They measure it by half-life, which says how long does it take for this chemical to rid itself 50%, so that's a half-life. And in some cases, there's lots of chemicals that can flow out of your body quickly, but I tended to pick more of the longer ones. But arsenic, bad, right? But in 2 to 4 days, that's what it takes to get rid of 50% of it. Cadmium is a chemical like in mining and manufacturing, 16 years. And you can see lead, look at that. 2 to 30 years it can sit in those bones, a half-life. I'd like to give a special shout out to DDT, which is an insecticide that we don't actually manufacture anymore. The CDC actually said that it was like 6 to 10 years, but there was a manufacturer on the California coast, not far from here, that in like the 40s and 50s was dumping a lot of DDT waste product into the ocean you see out there. And it's actually been studied and found, and frankly, they're not really even sure what to do with it. There is DDT contamination at the bottom of this ocean the size of the city of San Francisco. And this company, not only did they flush the contaminants into the sewer, they loaded up a bunch of barrels, like millions and millions of toxic waste onto barrels, took it out to sea, and before they dumped the barrels into the ocean, they punctured them so they would sink to the bottom, and then of course, contaminants would come out. So you see right now, scientists are studying what's going on out in that ocean area. That chemical is just as toxic as it was in the 40s and the 50s. So some of this stuff can stay around a very long time. So we have to be very aware of what we're spraying in our gardens or what we're spraying on the playgrounds, right? What we're putting out into the environment. That company that did it is now defunct. I don't know if that makes us feel any better. But how do we support our detox pathways? Really eating clean food, and we'll talk about that next, and avoiding ultra-processed food. Making sure you're getting enough nutrients, of course. Protein, fiber, we don't eat enough fiber. For sure we don't as a nation. Making sure you're getting your antioxidants, making sure you're hydrated and drinking filtered water so you're not introducing more toxins into your body. This is a little controversial, but as we're all gonna have a glass of wine tonight, right? But avoid it as much as possible. It is a very powerful toxin, and it's not great for our digestive system either. If you need supplementation and need to help your pathways, that's okay, but just make sure you need it. Don't just take it to take it and throw your money away. Move, make sure you're sweating. Make sure your bowels are moving every day. If your bowels are not moving every day, then that is something you need to work on right away, right? Because the toxins are not coming out like they should. You feed your gut with prebiotics and probiotics. So prebiotics are good for feeding the good bacteria in your digestive system. Probiotics are good for maintaining and growing that bacteria. So a probiotic would be yogurt, sauerkraut, and then prebiotics would be bananas, onions, artichokes, things of that nature. Or you could just take a supplement too. Buy non-toxic products. review blood work, and we'll talk about blood work at the very end, but there are in very common blood work that you should be getting every year. There are liver enzymes that are tested that can tell you if you're going to have a problem or already have a problem. Manage your other lifestyle issues for sure. And I mention genetic management because your genes are important to your detox pathways. As an example, the MTHFR, I always have to say it slow so I can remember every single one, gene has something to do with your phase 2 detox pathways. So if you have that gene expressed, both of them are expressed, then if that's one, it's good to know so that you can supplement what you need in order to make sure your detox pathways are working correctly. And actually on my website under resources, if you go under, I think it says DNA resources, there's 3 resources that I've given you. If you've done like a 23andMe or something like that, you can download your SNPs off of, they call them SNPs, your gene profile off of 23andMe. And I forget what the other one is that does your ancestry. And you can take those SNPs and actually upload them into these 3 companies that I've given to you. One is free, one's $12, and one's like $29. The one for I've tried them all, just so you know, to see what they were like. The one for $29 actually gives you a little bit better reporting, but it'll tell you, they all said the same thing, by the way, and they'll tell you what's going on as far as your genes. So that's just a little side note. So, what's in our food? This is one of my favorite quotes. The food you eat can either be the safest and most powerful form of medicine or the slowest form of poison. So speaking of poison, we're going to talk processed foods. There's 2 things I want to touch on: minimally processed foods and ultra processed foods. So minimally processed foods is the foods that you still recognize the end product as being a whole food, but it's really about preserving. Frozen fruit that you put in your smoothie, as long as there's no sugar in it, added sugar. Canned vegetables, right? Things like that are minimally processed. Ultra processed is made from substances that are from foods, but they're chemically added, right? So think of Oreo cookies, although we all love Oreo cookies. Cheetos. My husband loves Cheetos. So Cheetos, things of that nature, right? These foods contain stuff that we wouldn't cook with, right? You don't cook with yellow dye number 5 at home, right? That's the kind of stuff that's in ultra-processed foods. So what are food additives and preservatives? Food additives are really substances that are added during the manufacturing process, and it's really to modify what it tastes like, what it feels like in your mouth, right? What it smells like. Those are additives. Preservatives can either be natural or synthetic. So a natural preservative, which we've been doing for years, like pickling vegetables, salt and water, I think. I'm not very good at cooking. But that's a natural one, right? But they can also be synthetic. And it's all about preserving something. So here's a list of just some common food additives. This list is also on my website. And it's a little bit longer list, but like artificial coloring. It's made from petroleum. Yum. It's good stuff, right? It causes, dyes really cause allergies and hyperactivity in children, but also can cause cancer. Artificial sweeteners, chemically produced, and we'll talk artificial sweeteners in a little more detail, but promote weight gain and blood sugar issues. And then high fructose corn syrup is a really, really, really cheap form of sweetening. made from corn, obviously, but in a lot of different foods, and also promotes inflammation and other types of issues within your body. I won't go through them all, but there is definitely a long list of chemicals and additives and preservatives that are put into packaged foods that we buy and consume. So here's a test. How much ultra-processed food is on the shelves in our US grocery stores? What do you think? Shout it out. Oh, I hear something close over here. 73%. This was a study done by foodtank.org. And doesn't that make sense? Like you walk into a grocery store, on the left side's the vegetables, right? Right side's the meat, and the back's the dairy, which has a lot of processed yogurts and stuff anyway. But the whole center is packaged foods. In the US, we're number 1 for eating processed food. And 60% of the food we consume during the day is ultra-processed food. What else do they add? They add a lot of sugar. How much sugar do you think is added to packaged foods? Anyone? Shout it out. No? It's a lot. 74% of the packaged food has added sugar. And we consume 57 pounds on average, each of us, every year. That's a lot of sugar. I thought about it. I should have brought like 57 pounds of sugar and then like a wagon for all of us to see, right? And the American Heart Association puts out what our added sugar limits are, which is pretty easy to get to if we're eating all that packaged food, right? So then let's talk about sugar and sweeteners, because there's a lot of different names for sugar and sweeteners, and they all do different things. Sugars and sweeteners can do different things to your body, but again, we're consuming a lot of sugar, and it can be sugar, it can be syrup, it can be artificial sweeteners, even whole food sugars, which are better, yes. Honey that's locally produced is great, but it's still sugar. It has nutrients that come along with it, but still you can't be overdoing it. This list is also on my website. So manufacturers like to use different sugars, and you can see those listed on a label. Now the labels, by law, have to start by the ingredient that there's the most of, right? And then it goes to the ingredient that's the least of. So if I'm a manufacturer and I'm putting a lot of sugar in, I'm not saying they do this, but I'm just saying if I were a manufacturer, maybe I would put lots of different types of sugars in so I didn't have to put just one sugar at the top of the ingredient list. So let's look at one together. This is a cereal label, and so it has whole grain wheat, corn bran, raisins, sugar. Then you go down and, there's corn syrup. Oh, and the crispy oats have sugar in them. And then we have brown sugar. And then, do you see the toasted oats? They have sugar, molasses, and honey. And then it's brown sugar syrup, and it's honey. And then the wheat bits have sugar in them. And then there's malt syrup. So there's a lot of sugar, right? And it can go by lots of different names. If you look at labels, you can see that it says total sugar, but underneath that it says added sugar. So that's a quick way to see how much sugar has been added into a packaged food. What else is on our food? Pesticides, herbicides, insecticides. A lot of different pesticides are used on our food. The Environmental Working Group, their website is ewg.org. That's a really great website, by the way. They're a nonprofit. that does really good work in trying to inform consumers of what's in their food and what's in their personal care products, and does a lot of advocating to reduce pesticides. But they say from data that they received from the FDA and the Department of Agriculture that 75% of our conventionally fresh produce sampled was heavily pesticided. So how do pesticides get in our food? We spray crops, right? So it's on our crops, it's on the plants that we eat. Soil contamination, when we're spraying the soil, the plants absorb that pesticide. Water contamination, right? Runoff, then it gets into our drinking water. Animal feed is contaminated with pesticides. So the animals are eating the feed, and then it's bioaccumulating in their system, and then we're eating the meat. Cross-contamination, so spraying a field, but all the fields around it get contaminated as the wind carries the pesticide away. And then storage and transportation, you see a lot of pesticides used as well. Just quickly, I want to give a special shout out to a pesticide called glyphosate, better known as Roundup. A company called Monsanto created it and sold it for many years, and then when their patent ran out, other companies were able to sell it. They actually were bought by Bayer in 2018, but this is the most widely used herbicide in the world. And it's interesting, the EPA says, yeah, it's probably not causing cancer, right? But the International Agency for Research on Cancer said, yeah, it probably does. And frankly, lots of judges and juries think so too. Since it's been purchased by Bayer, they have doled out, the last count I saw was about $12 billion to people that have brought on lawsuits from getting cancer or other ailments from glyphosate. And they've set aside something like $60 billion more dollars. I don't know that it was a great purchase for them. And some countries have banned the product altogether, but corn and soy are like some major crops that get sprayed with glyphosate. The other thing that comes up, and Monsanto's been involved in this too, but GMOs are genetically modified organisms. And what they are basically just organisms that have their DNA changed in a way that wouldn't happen out in nature. And it's usually between species that are not related. So again, wouldn't necessarily happen in nature. By law, all our food has to be labeled GMO. They also say bioengineered. I guess that maybe sounds a little better. But if it's a restaurant using GMO, they don't have to label that, or you're a small manufacturer. Here's some GMO foods. Corn, cotton. I was actually just reading, let me see, find my notes. I think this was CDC. At least 90% of our soy, cotton, and corn are GMO. And more than 95% of the animals used for meat and dairy in the US eat GMO crops. Now, some people are bothered by a GMO and some aren't, but it's just something to be aware of, that there are companies out there modifying our seeds and our food. Oh, a great example, Monsanto created Roundup Ready corn. So what they did is they took a seed of corn and they injected soil bacteria that could withstand Roundup to make Roundup Ready corn. So you could plant that seed and you could douse it with all the Roundup you want and it wouldn't die. It's just an example. The other thing you're talking a business for Monsanto, right? So you're selling your Roundup to kill the weeds, but you're also selling the Roundup, the genetically modified corn, so it doesn't die. But the other thing they did too is the seed is sterile. So you can't take the seeds. Farmers, I'm not a farmer, but from what I've read, farmers take the seeds from this year's production, right, to plant for next year. These seeds, you can't do that. They made them all sterile, so you had to go back to them and buy more seeds. And then animal feed is not labeled as GMO. The animal feed can be GMO, but what comes from the animal doesn't have to be labeled GMO. So here's an example. Mayonnaise made from bioengineered product. So that's how you would see it. So a product on the shelf only indicates it's legal. It doesn't mean it's safe. So what's safer? Well, eating whole foods without pesticide, right? And how do we determine what has pesticide or GMOs on it? USDA has their label organic, right? And there's certain criteria. You can only use certain methods of getting rid of weeds. It's very, thank you, Cassandra. You have to work the soil a different way, and you have to go get certified. And it's not a one and done. They come and check every year to make sure you're adhering to the right way of getting rid of weeds, the right way of tilling your soil, and all of that kind of stuff. And I took this right from the USDA because I thought they did an amazing job of explaining the differences. So there's lots of different labels and it gets very confusing out there. So if something is 100% organic, and they put that label on there, every ingredient in there is certified organic. And they can use the seal, the organic seal. There's no GMOs as well. If it's 95% or more of the ingredients are organic, they can just say on the label organic. Still no GMOs. If it's 70%, then they can't say it's organic. They can't use the seal, but they can say made with organic ingredients. And so how this looks on a cereal box is exactly like this. 100% organic, 95% organic. They can use the seal and have the word organic. If it's 70% or more organic, they can list 3 things on the label in front that are organic in there. But they can't use the seal. So if you're buying organic, then you know it's less pesticides, right? And that it's not GMO. Now I know organic's expensive. So see this cantaloupe, bottom left, $2.49 a pound. That was like a $10 cantaloupe. It gets expensive. So how do we then decide maybe what we should buy organic or want to buy organic and what maybe we can buy conventional? So EWG, Environmental Working Group, again, comes to save the day. They put out a list every year called the Dirty Dozen or the Clean 15. And so the Dirty Dozen, again, this is information that they've gotten from the FDA and from the Department of Agriculture in the US of samplings of produce. And so this list says number 1 on the list is strawberries. So if I'm in the grocery store and I'm thinking, I want some strawberries, should I buy them organic or should I not buy them organic? If I can afford to, I'd buy them organic. As a matter of fact, strawberries are they have tons of pesticide on them. But hey, if I'm thinking about cabbage, no, I wouldn't really think about cabbage. Carrots. If I was thinking carrots, like the carrots we had last night for dinner, right? They're actually on the Clean 15. So they would be cleaner and have less pesticides on them. So this is just like a nice guide if you're trying to decide what to buy organic and what not to buy organic. And in the end, the purpose of food is really just to fuel our bodies, right? With the highest quality of ingredients that we can get. It's never about being perfect. It's about just being better, right? We're never going to be perfect. Because frankly, I still like salt and vinegar potato chips. So I just buy them organic. I guess that makes me feel a little better. But so just quickly, food marketing, because I know I'm running on time. There's some labels out there like natural. What does that even mean? And frankly, I don't even know. The FDA doesn't really have any definition. They have a policy that says, well, we think it means there's no artificial or synthetic ingredients in it, but it doesn't really mention anything about pesticides or how the food is manufactured, and it doesn't address any nutritional claims. Here's an example as I was rolling through the grocery store looking for peanut butter. Skippy says it's natural. What does that really mean? It means to them, it means roasted peanuts, sugar, not thrilled about that. Palm oil, certainly not thrilled about that, and salt. But Adams, right next to them, says 100% natural. And it's just peanuts. And it also says, I don't know if you can see, it says non-GMO on there. Peanuts are not like a heavily GMO'd kind of product, but it just gives you an example. It's important to just turn the label and take a look. Hey, a tip about peanut butter, because don't you hate when you buy that peanut butter and it has that oil slick at the top? I'm always so tempted just to dump it out, but you really don't do that. A tip is to turn it upside down when you put it in your pantry so it can start now, the oil's at the bottom, and it can start to reabsorb at the top. And then also, after you get your arm workout from trying to stir that peanut butter in, right? It's hard to get down to the bottom. You could put it in the refrigerator, and that'll keep it from separating again, but then you have cold peanut butter. Another thing is how people label like sugar-free. So I saw this, sugar-free, cool. Then I turned it over, and I see sucralose in there. That is made from sugar. It's Splenda. It's an artificial sweetener. Per the FDA, that's sugar-free. So just so you know, if you're trying to like take down the amount of sweet stuff, right, any kind of sweeteners, you've got to turn over the label. If you're looking at a label and it's an unknown ingredient, it's probably synthetic, artificial. If it's numbered, that's a very bad sign. And it's a color, that's a bad sign too. Multi-syllable ingredients, have you seen those really long, like what is that? It's artificial and synthetic. Anything that ends in an 8, like phosphate or sulfate, is probably synthetic. This is my favorite, enriched or fortified. So what happens is they take this food that once was food, thank you, and they manufacture it and they strip everything out that was good. And then at the end, they decide, hey, I'm gonna put back some of the things I took out, synthetic stuff. And then any ingredients in all capital letters. So what actions can you take? Yes, read the labels, but oh my gosh, it takes a long time. You don't have 3 hours to spend in the grocery store. So I recommend maybe using some apps. I use Yucca. I've been using it for a long time. It has like a little carrot on the front so you can see it on your in the app store. And the reason I like it, because it scans super fast. Like don't wave your arms around in the grocery, because it'll just start scanning on all sorts of things. But it'll scan and it'll give a score from 0 to 100. Now I always, unless it's a 1, Cheetos gets a 1. I know that's shocking. I think Stephanie scanned some Reese's peanut butter cups and it got a 0. So if it gives a 0 or 1, yeah, you can just move on. You don't even have to look at as to why they say it's a 0 or 1. But I tend to always then look. You can look and see what don't they like about it, right? Is there something that you can live with? And it'll tell you what additives are, and then you can dive into what the additives are. So for example, going back to my salt and vinegar chips, it's Weston's, they're organic, and they say they're good. I think it gets like a 60. which to me, I don't know that that's very good, but it gets 60. And what they don't like is there's too much sodium. Well, of course, it's salt and vinegar, right? And it doesn't like that there's too many calories in it. But the rest of it is not bad. So I don't eat potato chips every day, every week, but once in a while, I'm okay with that. There's another app called Healthy Living that's from that environmental working group. They have a nice way that you can scan foods as well. By the way, side note on environmental working group, they also have on their website, if you put ewg.org, and I think it's /water, you can put in your zip code and it'll take you to your local county, whoever provides your water, and you can see the water report so you can see what's in your water and what you're drinking if you're drinking out of the tap. They also have something that's called Skin Deep, so ewg.org /Skin Deep, where you can put in your personal care products and find out all the interesting things that you're putting on your skin. So that is a great resource. Really just try to limit your ultra-processed foods. I know we all like to have those every once in a while, but just try, if you can, to take those down just a notch if you want to be a little bit healthier. Education, I talked about EWG. Actually, our US government sites are pretty interesting. Sometimes they have a lot of interesting information about how your food is processed and what the laws are around it. And then, if you're interested, find your favorite podcaster that you trust or author. There's lots of books. I just read a book called Dark Calories, which is about oils, which is pretty interesting and eye-opening. Buy organic if you can. Another thing you can do is go out to the farmers markets, right? And get to know the producers there. They're not, smaller farmers are not gonna spend the money or the time to go get certified organic. Why would they, right? So a lot of times though, they're producing food that is organic. So just ask the questions. And then learn the companies that you can trust and those that you can't. So as far as testing is concerned, when you get your annual blood work, you can look at liver enzymes on there. And I've listed some here, ALT, AST, GGT. And you can see, are they over time, are they going up? That can signal a problem. Are they already high? Then you may already have a problem. So if you're getting blood work done every year, and again, everyone should. There's also, if you really think it's a major problem, you can get some tests that are mostly urine tests. Some insurance companies pay for them, some don't. But there's lots of different urine tests you can do to test for heavy metals and toxins. I put hair analysis up here. It's a little more controversial. I don't really do it on my clients, but some of my colleagues do with success. So there's that option as well. And then we certainly talked about genetic testing to figure out if you have any genes that are expressing themselves that are interfering with your detox pathways. And what about all the other stuff? Personal care products can be toxins, right? We talked about air pollution, plastics. When plastic is, like you put a water bottle, if you have a plastic water bottle and you put it in the sun, when it's warming up, it's actually putting toxins out into that water as it warms, Your cleaning products have toxins in them, furniture and pans and Teflon, bad. Clothing, textiles, electronics, there are a lot out there. So just be aware that they're out there and try to make choices if you want to, right? To move from plastic to glass, right? Or for personal care, deodorants that have aluminum, maybe change over to ones that don't, right? There's a lot of little things that we can do. And there's a lot of stuff out on the internet that can help guide you. Even just using dryer balls instead of the dryer sheets is helpful. So thank you very much for your attention. Appreciate it.